Afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2023. It is 3:03 p.m. This session is set to go until 4 p.m. and I do have a hard stop at 4, and so does Ramiro. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along with us on the YouTube channel. Carolina Mejia, I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. Commissioner Gary Edwards is excused for this meeting. Also in the boardroom, we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, as well as Matt Unselman, who's the acting county engineer, Becky Kahn, who is the acting county traffic engineer, and we have other staff as well, Mike and
Steve Brickers, construction manager, yeah.
and so
Mike Lohman.
Mike Lohman. I just said Mike, but sorry, Mike, I didn't even. So we'll go ahead and do kind of introductions, and then I'll pass this on to Matt.
All right,
To shine.
all right, let's do this. So thanks in advance for your time today. My name's, as you said, my name's Matt Huntsman, acting county engineer. Today we have a presentation that will provide you with a brief summary of what the current state of our transportation system is. This is an informational briefing only. We're not gonna be asking for any tough decisions today, but we're gonna cover a lot of ground in a quick amount of time, so hang on. We have an impressive transportation system. So our transportation system has more than 1,000 miles of road, 150 bridges, 1,000 streetlights, 17,000 traffic signs, more than 100 miles of sidewalk, and countless other assets. Altogether, our transportation system is worth more than $1 billion. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, we have more than 1,000 miles of roadway in our system. These 1,000 miles of roadway include arterial, collectors, and local roadways. We have 64 miles of arterial roadways. Those are the roads that carry most of the traffic entering and leaving those urban areas of the county. Examples of those roads include like your Martin Ways, your Pacific Avenues, Mud Bays. We have another 270 miles of collectors. Collectors are those roads that extend between your arterials and commercial areas or residential areas. An example of that would be Boston Harbor Road, Bald Hill Road. And then finally, we have 664 miles of local roads, and those are just your neighborhood streets. What's significant that a lot of people don't realize about our roadway system is that 390 miles of it are actually freight routes. And people don't realize how much freight goes through Thurston County. For an example, down on Old Highway 99 in Grand Mound, between State Route 12 and the county line, 7 million tons of freight goes through that corridor each year. And as you've seen Grand Mound continue to grow, that number is gonna keep on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And especially that you combine that with the Port of Centralia south of the county line expanding as well. So while our roadway inventory is impressive with more than 1,000 miles, it's a huge task to take care of it. We categorize our roads into 3 different categories: good, fair, and poor. 530 miles of our roads are categorized as good, and we can preserve them with cheaper treatments such as crack sealing or chip sealing. However, you can see that 437 miles are in fair condition, and once our roads meet that fair condition, then we have to do more expensive treatments such as an overlay. And unfortunately, overlays are very expensive, especially as the price of oil continues to go up and inflation. We're paying about $400,000 per mile just to overlay a road. In the upcoming year, we have 3 significant overlay projects. We have a big one on Martin Way. That's gonna go from Carpenter Road to Lacey City Limits, which is down by Galaxy. And then on the other side of the city limits, we're gonna go from the east end of Lacey City Limits down to the traffic signal at Meridian and Dedereau. Then we also received $2.8 million to do an overlay project on Pacific Avenue, going from Carpenter Road to Union Mills. And then we've also received $3.1 million of federal funding to pave Yelm Highway between Rich Road and city limits, which is near the Shayless Western overcross, or trail overpass. And then finally, at the bottom, you can see that we have 13 miles that are in poor condition. And unfortunately, once the road is in poor condition, there's nothing you can do to fix it except strip the asphalt off, rebuild the base, and that costs about $1.6 million. So whenever we can try to get in front of maintenance and catch it when the roads are in good or at least fair condition, it's money better spent. Last year, we resurfaced 49 miles of roadway. And while pavement preservation gets a lot of credit in the county, there's a lot more that goes along to our preservation program. In 2022, we painted 600 miles of traffic line. We swept 2,700 miles of roadway. We cleaned 20,000 feet of culvert pipe. We cleaned more than 1,500 catch basins. We inspected 3,800 traffic control devices. And my favorite is we picked up nearly 300,000 pounds of garbage from alongside the roads. And so you can see, we weren't slackers in 2022. We got a lot done. And we plan on getting even more done in 2023. So next, we're gonna jump.
Because we're gonna test them out next year.
I'm gonna tell my wife, and she's always she's complaining about litter. I'm gonna be like 295,000 pounds. Kind of staff.
We do our part, that's for sure.
But I think the issues would remove garbage from the right of way.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's a lot, it's invisible line in the right of way, and then you have a lot of garbage on private property next to the road, which we can't do anything about it.
Next, we're gonna jump into something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's roadway safety. So every 2 years, Public Works staff evaluates all the intersections in Thurston County in terms of the number of collisions that are occurring at those intersections. And then we can plan for our safety improvement projects. So 2 recent examples of that include the roundabout at Mullen and Carpenter that had an extremely high crash history before we did it. And the more recent one is the roundabout we installed at Yelm Highway and Meridian Road. And that one didn't just have a lot of collisions. The severity of the collisions was unfortunately really bad because people drive so fast on Yelm Highway. It turned out really nice. That's this guy.
Met her out there too, yeah.
So we also have developed a local county road safety plan. And that safety plan is geared at addressing run off the road collisions in our corridors. Because when we put that plan together, the plan determined that that was the predominant crash type in Thurston County. We're proud to say that we received the beginning of hopefully a lot of federal infrastructure funding to go ahead and update that plan to include intersections so that we can look for low-cost improvements to install at the intersections throughout the county as well. So in terms of measuring safety, one way of evaluating it is by tracking the number of collisions that involve fatalities or serious injuries. Unfortunately, you can see on the screen that the number of serious injuries and fatal collisions is generally trending upward. And that's not just a problem that's unique to Thurston County. All of the local agencies are experiencing the same thing. Nationwide, this is a trend. I was recently watching a news article, and one of the reasons they were saying that the number of fatalities and serious injury collisions are continuing to increase is the number of these incidents where alcohol or under the influence of something else, and also speed is involved. And unfortunately, when we look at our fatal and serious injury collisions in Thurston County, a good percentage of them involve speed and alcohol.
Do you have, maybe it was, it wouldn't be serious fatality, but I mean, like alcohol's been a problem forever.
Mm-hmm.
Distracted driving with smartphones is like a newer issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I've never been hit by a drunk driver, but I've been hit I've been rear-ended or hit 4 times by people on their phones in my life. So I mean, it seems to me like this trend could potentially be explained by that, but you're saying it's showing a greater percentage of alcohol-related accidents?
There is. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of collisions that do involve, they call it distracted driving.
Right.
And I can get you that percentage if you'd be interested.
Curious.
Yeah.
But fatalities, you're not seeing it as much, there, is what you're saying, right?
That's true.
Serious injury, like, how do you define that? Is it like someone goes hospital or?
Yeah, basically, that's decided by the officer at the scene. Usually a broken arm would be considered a serious injury, but if you got a scrape, they wouldn't consider that to be a serious injury. But the problem is that, as I mentioned, so many of our collisions involve run off the road. And what the problem is a lot of our speed limits are 40, 50 miles an hour. And so if you go off the road 40, 50 miles an hour, unfortunately, a lot of the times it's gonna be a serious injury or fatality collision.
Most people falling asleep or?
Some of them fall asleep, yeah. I mean,
That's how I got stuck in Tacoma yesterday. The guy apparently fell asleep. A truck, semi-trailer.
oh, really?
And it fell over and exploded. Shut down I-5 for.
We had one of those a couple of weeks ago too. Where it shut down and all the traffic was being diverted through Yelm. Huh.
Yeah, this was at exit 135, so it was in the Bruton. And I'm just curious because you see more and more trucks on I-5, you know, I mean, just probably Amazon, good delivery and stuff. And so those truck drivers, I don't know if they have standards that they can follow, or are they getting, you know, driven to excess, like, why are they falling asleep, right? Like, do they have like appropriate standards for their work shifts and all that? Cause there's more and more trucks. And I'm sure they're short of drivers, like everybody else is short-staffed. Can't find, you know, intercity transit can't find enough drivers to bring back the late-night bus, which my constituents aren't happy about. The buses at the schools, you know. So I'm sure they can't find enough truck drivers, and there may be, I don't know, that's a little beyond this scope of this thing, but it goes to highway safety.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're talking about speed and stuff, but to me, it's like, if you're awake and you're alert, and you know, you're probably can handle faster speeds, you know, but if you're like been on a 14-hour drive and you're falling asleep, it's really dangerous.
It is dangerous. Burger, you probably know better than I, but I believe they have to keep logs
Yeah,
in the
they
truck.
have to keep log
There's
books.
standards, but.
Yeah, and I know there's limitations, but I don't know much about the checking process or who turns them in and who checks it and that kind of stuff. But I mean, I'm pretty sure WashDOT sets all that stuff, and
Think
then
so.
nationally, I think there's requirements in addition to that too, but.
So I don't think I'm surprising anybody when I say that improving safety is obviously very important to Public Works. And it's evident by the amount of resources that we've spent on safety. Between 2016 and 2022, we've spent $5.5 million on specifically safety-focused projects. But then we've spent another $21 million on other capital projects that have some sort of a safety element to them. In the next couple of years, we have some projects that include curb signage, street lighting, Commissioner Edwards isn't here, rumble strips, guardrails, speed feedback signs, and removing hazards from the right-of-way that could be dangerous for errant vehicles. So next,
Well, just before you go off that, I mean, if we want to spin this positively, it's like fatalities have dropped every single year since 2017. 13, 10, 7, 6, 5, 4.
Fatalities.
oh, fatalities,
Fatalities.
but the serious, I
Lots
like,
of injuries, but I
yeah.
mean, road fatalities are dropping in Thurston County since 2017. That's good.
it is good.
Serious injuries less.
Safer vehicles.
That could be
I bet you that.
just as many crashes, but the vehicles are saving people's lives. You think like that technology, you know, if there's road, you know, driver assistance and road collision stuff, doesn't seem like that's helping, it sounds like. greater technology in the vehicle.
I think it's still new though. I'm not giving up on it yet.
Yeah.
So next we're gonna talk about our ADA program. So Public Works has an ADA transition plan in place to address, the federal mandate that we update all of our ADA facilities to current standards. Currently, we have more than 2,000, ADA ramps in our inventory. And unfortunately, because the ADA standards keep, changing, a lot of our facilities are no longer in compliance and require an update. We also have more than 100 miles of sidewalk in our inventory, and 30 miles of that needs to be updated to meet ADA requirements as well. The ADA transition plan has prioritized Martin Way as the priority for improvements. And I can say that in the past couple of years, we've put a couple projects into that corridor, and then we have one more this year. And all of the ADA facilities along Martin Way will be in compliance, with federal requirements. So next, we're gonna, jump to traffic calming, and I will give kudos to the commissioners on this one, because our traffic calming program was not funded until a couple years ago. And the commissioners went ahead and approved funding to put towards the traffic calming program. So since then, traffic engineering has been working with 15 to 20 neighborhoods each year, regarding their, concerns about drivers speeding through the neighborhoods. This funding is used to install speed humps and traffic circles. Last year we installed speed humps on Husky Way between School Street and Kenwood. And then we just recently opened bids for a project to install a traffic circle on, Ridgeview Drive between Stilcomb Road and Martin Way.
So is this funding, I know, something in my assistant is checking with Becky on the citizen request near Griffin School. And then you said there was like a program they could apply.
Yes, this would be
Is that the funding you're talking about? We funded like, and then people, you can at least, I don't know how many get funded each year, once or one or two, but.
Generally one or two, we can fund one or two neighborhoods a year.
And we'll be making that decision for the next year here in the next month.
So next, we're gonna jump to bridges. Public Works has 150 bridges in our bridge inventory. If you're ever looking to find information out about our bridges, the best place to go is our bridge index, which is the final chapter of the tip that we submit to you annually. On this next slide, you can see a quick summary of the condition of our inventory. Fortunately, we no longer have any structurally deficient bridges in the county. When we recently replaced our Reeder Road Bridge, that was the last one. However, we do have 19 bridges that are considered, functionally obsolete. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them structurally. They just can't, that just means like there's, for example, there's a 2-lane bridge, but you got 3 lanes of road on both sides. They just, or they can't, accommodate sidewalks, but structurally they're okay. We have 2 bridges on Old Highway 99. I say we, one of those bridges is owned by Tenino, which we do bridge inspections on for, that are turning 100 years old this year. And then we got 2 more on Delphi and 1 more on Little Rock next year that are turning 100 years old. So we have a robust, bridge program. And based upon that program, we can prioritize, our bridge replacements. The top bridge on the list is the Yelm Highway Bridge over the Amtrak, or near the Amtrak station that goes over to BNSF tracks. We're looking for $20 million to replace that bridge. That would be a huge, significant investment. We've also prioritized Beaver Creek Bridge on Tilly Road. And then on the far right of the screen, you can see the Little Rock Road Bridge that I mentioned is turning 100 years old. That's near 113th. The good news about that one is we've got federal funding to go ahead and replace it next year when it turns 100 years old. So that's a quick summary of our bridge inventory.
Real quick on that.
Yeah.
On your chart, remind me what Scour Critical means?
Scour Critical means that if we get a heavy rainfall event and the creek comes up rapidly, that bridge is susceptible to failure because it doesn't have deep foundations on it.
Like washing out of the sediment around the foundations, basically.
Yeah, wait, so it will happen or it could happen?
It could happen.
Just
There's a
susceptible.
higher probability than a bridge that's supported on pilings, for example, that go deep into the earth.
So where does that put it in terms of something that's functionally obsolete, or, I mean, is it,
That doesn't come into play for functionally obsolete. That,
so Scour Critical would be, like, if we had money right now, some big federal grant came, and would we be looking, and we've got these bridges, would we be looking to replace the Scour Critical ones first?
yeah, we'd be looking at the Scour Criticals only because we don't have any bridges in our system that are considered structurally deficient. So yes, we'd be looking at those. The one on, like, for example, the one on Little Rock Road that we're replacing is Scour Critical.
Okay.
So that's a definite consideration. Okay, so next we're gonna talk about our road standards update. And this is something that, frankly, we've probably been overdue to upgrade our, road standards for a while. But with this upgrade, it's gonna give us some opportunities. We're gonna be able to incorporate our Complete Streets program. And what that will do is provide more bicycle and walking facilities, especially on our facilities in the urban growth area. It'll give us an opportunity to enhance vehicle safety by prohibiting objects from being installed within the right of way. And also an opportunity to address sight distance issues for vehicles traveling on and onto roadways. It also gives us an opportunity to streamline how assets are brought into our inventory. Everybody sees all the development going on around the county, but nobody thinks about all the assets that are included in those developments that Thurston County has to maintain, such as the streetlights, the catch basins, the culvert pipes. Development, don't get me wrong, development's a good thing, but it's also a lot of work for us to maintain all those assets. And so this allows us to get those assets in our asset management program so we can manage them more efficiently. And then our final slide today is regarding challenges. The first one is our current funding does not adequately allow Public Works to maintain existing pavement conditions. We're having a problem with materials availability. And because of the materials availability issues, a lot of our capital projects are being delayed, or we'll have to do what's called a suspension of work and delay the work until the materials come in. Recruitment, obviously, it's not specific to Thurston County. Other agencies in the areas are struggling with recruitment. And this is difficult because staff has a heavy workload and we're having a tougher time filling positions. But again, we're not complaining. That's not a problem unique to Thurston County. I think Commissioner Mejia sits on the policy board, and I think Olympia was voicing their concern the other day that they were having problems filling positions as well. So with that concludes the presentation. Happy to have any discussion or follow-up discussion or answer any questions.
I have a couple questions. In terms of the gravel roads that we have, the 20 miles of gravel roads.
Oh, the thing I forgot to talk about?
I was hoping you could kind of touch on those, like where are those at? Is it like for trails? Like where are those?
You wanna take that one?
Those, sure, they're not constrained to one area of the county, they're throughout the county. We would love to develop a program where we could upgrade those. They do take a considerable amount of maintenance through the year to keep up, and they degrade far faster than a paved road. But there's no specific area of the county where they exist necessarily more than another.
Would those be considered like the last mile
Yeah,
to a paved road and just the last mile?
Oftentimes,
Yeah.
yes.
Is the cost to do that the same as when you say it's 1.6 million per mile to replace a road? Is that the cost to pave a new road, or is that different?
It's kinda all over the place. Some of them, we tried over the years to pick off as many as we could where they made sense and, or, you know, there were safety concerns, stuff like that. And I think kind of the ones that are left, a lot of them have a lot of difficulties, like there's wetlands right next to it, you know. When you go to pave it, all of a sudden people can drive faster, so then you have to have more safety features, a wider road, that kind of thing. And that bigger footprint takes a lot of work and could impact, you know, wetlands and stuff like that. So I
It'd
guess
be more expensive than just the
Yeah.
paving of
And
a road that's already there.
a lot for maybe what's, you know, 500 feet of gravel and serves 2 houses, you know, I mean, we still maintain the gravel, but there's a lot that goes into it, but safety is a big one too. As soon as we pave, some of them are really windy. And so if we go to pave it and it's windy like that, then people are gonna start driving 50 instead of when it's gravel, we'll go 20 and anyways, sorry, I talked a lot. There's a lot of factors to it.
So at some point, we were considering having a BST treatment on those gravel roads.
Yeah.
There's often considerations of upgrading drainage, other factors that would be involved other than just the resurfacing.
You know, considering the, under the guidelines, gravel is considered impervious surface. So BST treatment wouldn't increase really the impervious surfaces anyways. But I think the BST treatment will probably allow for at least the water not to infiltrate and create potholes. May be an option. BST, that's bituminous surface treatment.
Chip seal.
Chip seal, but you can do 2 layers of chip seal on a gravel road in lieu of full-on paving it. And a lot of our gravel road upgrades were done that way with the double chip, basically, yeah.
Trying to think of where the gravel roads are.
And consider the county across the state, we have such a small number of miles gravel road. Some other counties, they have, King County has significantly, comparably speaking, significantly more than Thurston County.
So my next question is those 13 miles of poor condition roads, do those go like to the top of the priority this year to upgrade, or how does that work?
Some of those get brought into the capital projects program basically, but those are a lot of ones that we talk with design over the years and say, hey, this is, you know, getting in bad shape. The County Road Administration Board gives out RAP funding, and that's one of the specific criteria they look at is what's the condition of this road? Is it in rough condition? So we try to target those for those capital projects so it doesn't pull out of our main preservation fund that we need to be using on chip seal, and kind of leverage that crab money to pick those off and take care of them.
We also look at, in terms of traffic volume, what's gonna serve the greatest need.
Traffic volume plays a key role on that, I think.
Okay, and then my last question is in regards to the ADA program for, and Matt, you mentioned that they've been changing, and are we given a timeline to complete those upgrades, or like whenever those changes happen, or how does that work?
Oh, Becky can correct me if I say this wrong. There's not a timeline associated with it. You just have to have a plan in place that demonstrates how you're gonna improve those facilities. Cause obviously, we have 2,000 ADA ramps in our inventory. That's gonna take a significant investment to replace all those. And I think they understand that most municipalities don't have funding to improve them all in a short amount of time. So we just need to have that long-term plan that demonstrates how we're going to improve them.
When they change
That's
the requirements again, and then we start back from zero.
You're right, it's a moving goalpost, and
Feds don't have the same unfunded mandate rule that the state
This
has.
goes back, this is an old, back in the 1990s. The Department of Justice sued the city of Honolulu because they didn't have a plan. And at that point, when the city of Honolulu was sued on ADA compliance, they didn't have an option to continue to work. They were given a mandate as to when they needed to fix it. So that was a wake-up call to a lot of jurisdictions across the country as to how we need to develop a transition plan. So we developed a transition plan in Thurston County 7 years ago.
We began at 7 years ago.
In developing the transition plan, really, what the Department of Justice does, as long as you have a plan to address those deficiencies, you're good. And just about every jurisdiction across the country has that approach. Avoiding the Department of Justice to sue in any jurisdiction. So in the standards in 1990 are totally different in 2000, 2010, and I believe recently they changed the standards again. So for those jurisdictions who addressed the ADA compliance back in the mid-90s, all of a sudden that inventory became non-compliant based on the current standards. So it's a continued revolving door.
So basically, any development that was built in 1990, every single ramp in there is no longer compliant.
It's tough with tree roots too. You might have a neighborhood that was fine 5 years ago, but now tree roots and stuff, the sidewalk's heaved and it's not, so there's that. It's new too.
Thank you.
So I have an important question. Is Matt the acting or the interim?
He's the interim.
Yeah, it's interim, I think. 'Cause acting would mean you're like stepping in like in a particular moment, like, you know, like Scott can't
He's
make it
acting,
somewhere,
yeah.
so you're acting county manager first day, but you've been given the position for a.
So I'm interim.
You're interim.
I didn't know my own title.
Yeah, you gotta get your title.
Yeah, because you're not acting on the sitting
You're not acting on
county
somebody's
engineer on
behalf.
their
You are
behalf,
the
you're
interim
interim. You're
county
fully
manager.
vested as an interim.
So there you go.
Well, I'm a little embarrassed I didn't know my
Becky
job
is the
title.
interim.
Interim traffic, I was reading from
Yeah.
here, so you messed me up
Yeah.
too. Okay, so it is 3:34 PM. Thank you for this presentation. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was a point with public health.